This video serves several purposes. Firstly, to remedy the mistakes I made in my first, but secondly, to ask the question, how do you use an operating system? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So first, I'd like to correct the mistakes that I made with my first video. I was wrong about renaming files being harder in Windows 11. It's actually better now. I was sticking to my old habit of right-clicking, then looking for the rename option, which now involves the extra step of going down to show more options before it appears. And when I discovered this, I reached the conclusion that it had been made harder to rename files. But as people have pointed out, it isn't. I could have slowly double-clicked on the item I wanted to rename instead, although that feels a bit approximate, especially given the extra delay that I experience in Windows 11. The best solution is just to press F2, which I really like and will be doing in the future. Or I could just have clicked the new rename icon, which my brain simply didn't acknowledge as being rename. More on this later. And I said there wasn't support for WhatsApp on Windows, and while there is, I'm sticking to what I said about this because it doesn't exist in the manner in which I'd want to use it. More on this later too. I believe everything else I said about Windows 11 remains true. I tried it for 40 days, and while I know we'll all be using it in the future, right now I considered it to be lacking any new or exciting features, and is still a bit buggy and rough around the edges. I thought that this was a perfectly reasonable conclusion to reach, and is completely acceptable while the software is in beta stage. However, that video left some people angry and upset. Some were so dismayed by my opinions that they took to my business email to tell me that I'm a bad man. Very clearly, my mixed response to Windows 11 was deemed offensive and triggered people who have been left crying and shaking. I think the most common thing I heard is that if a product has beta slapped onto it, then it should be immune to criticism, which is ridiculous. It's in the beta stage where the most change can be made to it, and so it's more important than ever that I highlight where I felt it was lacking and what I'd like to see added to it in the future. Take a load of this guy, who was telling me that I shouldn't test out an operating system unless I'm going to use it to test it out, and because I reached the conclusion that it's not as good as Windows 10, I shouldn't have used it in the first place. Anyway, in case you agree with this, I'll explain why I tried it out. I like to try new stuff because it's the best way to learn and to improve my understanding about stuff. It's how I discover new ways of doing things that may or may not benefit me to use in the future, but I only know once I've tried it out. Anybody with even the slightest interest in technology is curious about what a new operating system is like. It's something we've all used for countless years, so of course we're going to be interested in a new one, to experience it before release, and to watch it develop over time into a polished, working piece of software. If it turns out to be great, then it's paid off already and I'll continue to use it. As the case was, it's usable but not good enough for me to stick with right now. So I got a video out of it and will be returning to Windows 10 until sometime in the future. And even if Windows 11 had turned out to be a complete disaster, it would have been a great video too. And it's not like I'm stuck with it, I can always reformat back to Windows 10 again, a process that I've got down to about 2 hours now. Something I've been curious about is, who tests beta software? If everybody has the mindset of this guy, then I guess it'll never be tested. An operating system isn't just something you can install and click about in. To test an operating system, it involves you using it the way you intend to. So there is a bit of a leap into the unknown about it. As he so eloquently puts it, it's for those who want to test the features and provide feedback to Windows team. And that nicely brings me on to the last and most important bit of this video. How do you use an operating system? Because we all know how to use one, but I don't think we know how other people use them. The only time I see somebody else using Windows is when I'm helping them with a problem that they're having with it, so I'm often watching people who don't know the software that well. What I don't normally see is experienced people using it. Because why would I? If you watched to the end of my Windows 11 video, then you'd have heard me go on about how personal and vulnerable it feels to be showing the world how I use Windows. Because even though I've used it to create thousands of things, even though I know the software well, I still didn't know that F2 could be used to rename stuff. And I wouldn't have done had I not made that video and had the hundreds of you that explained your various methods of renaming files to me. Amusingly, a debate in the comment section broke out over which method of renaming was best. Obviously mine wasn't going to win any prizes, but it looks like I'd have been corrected by someone no matter which option I used. Don't think you're immune to this. I'm sure there are simple things that you don't know about the software that you're using, even software that you think you're super familiar with. And I think I have reasons for why I didn't know about F2. Believe me, I'll be using it in the future, but looking at my time with Windows, I don't think it's too absurd that I didn't know about it, because until Windows 11, right-clicking on something and selecting rename wasn't quite enough hassle to force me to find a better alternative. It was annoying to rename files in bulk, but I seldom had to do that, and so because I only have to rename 1 or 2 files at a time, it just doesn't take long enough to require me finding a better method to do it. It's only because they hid the option I'm used to behind an extra click that it reached the point where I became frustrated enough about it to mention it. So that's great. And you can call me an idiot for not recognizing this icon as being the rename one, but that's testing for you. And it's good feedback for Windows that I, as someone who is experienced with Windows, still didn't notice the new renaming icon, even after 40 days of using it. I acknowledge that what I was doing was wrong, and I will be doing it right in the future. But it's helped me to understand how I use an operating system and the shortcomings of my methods. WhatsApp is another example. You won't believe this, but I did actually know about the web app. I didn't know you could download it, but even now I do, it still isn't fit for purpose. I think some people use a PC just to browse the internet. For those people, having WhatsApp open in a tab might be a good solution. I do a lot of desktop stuff, and I want as little distraction as possible while still being notified about things. So I downloaded the WhatsApp desktop app from the website and set it up. And it looks like it's one of those programs that closes when you close it, and it doesn't show up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So for those reasons, it doesn't do what I want it to. I don't want it taking up space along the bottom of my taskbar. I instinctively close things there when I'm not using them because that's how I like to use Windows. So yeah, I use the bulk of the screen for viewing what I'm currently doing. I like to only have the programs I'm currently using along the bottom, and then for notifications from Discord and WhatsApp and things like that to be quietly shown down here. I think this way of using Windows goes back a long way, maybe back as far as XP or even further still. Younger people might not have these habits. I've noticed a trend in newer versions of Windows to want to show programs along the taskbar even when they're not in use, which I greatly dislike, and I'm resistant to that sort of change. So anyway, that's how I use my operating system. I've never had to think about this before, and now that I am, I can see that the way I use Windows is messy. It's common for there to be two different icons for the same program at the same time, but in different places on the screen. I have Discord here and here. There's got to be a more elegant solution. Maybe I don't mind unopened programs being visible along the bottom, I just have issue with them being on the left, which mixes them up with the programs that I do have open. It would be cool to have a system where, when Discord's running in the background, the icon shows up in the bottom right hand corner, and then when I click on it and it opens up Discord, it moves from being on the right hand side of the screen to the left, joining the rest of the programs that I currently have open in the taskbar. I think that would be cool. But I tried to give the systems in Windows 11 a chance. I try to be patient with change. Because I don't want to become one of those old people who complains about how everything used to be better. And because I like the idea of becoming more productive, if the new way of doing things is objectively better. I just don't want change for the sake of change. Or worse still, simply to copy Apple. But getting used to new stuff is hard. Because having made my own games, I know how stupid people are, even the smart ones. Having made the game, I go into it with hundreds of hours of experience and an excellent knowledge of the game's mechanics. But I only have to watch somebody else playing it for the first time to see how bad they are, and more specifically, how unintuitive my game is. Players won't understand that that thing over there is a save point. They won't understand that a certain weapon is good against a certain type of foe. They might not even notice that door over there that they're meant to go through. Watching people play a game for the first time is infuriating. With Windows 11, I am now that stupid person bumping around and missing obvious stuff. It's just that, with the renaming of files, I just happened to miss a particularly obvious thing. Then, still managing to make progress with my old method of doing it, assumed I was doing it the way I was meant to. With hindsight, I appreciate what Microsoft has done here. They're working to improve the right-click menu for Windows 11, but are keeping the old one as a backup just in case something goes wrong with the new design. I just hope, when they see me completely ignoring the new rename icon, that they know it's because I didn't notice it, and not because I stubbornly stick to my old methods despite it. In case you're listening, Microsoft, perhaps you could swap out the old style of right-click menu for a radial system, so that you can do the most common shortcuts in a simple right-click flick, instead of having to click, aim, then click again. I was wrong about some of the stuff in Windows 11, but that video still stands. It remains my first impressions of Windows 11 and my thoughts about it. I still think I was fair and objective with what I said. I acknowledged it was a beta, I knew what I had signed up for, and any negative points I made weren't intended as damning criticism of Windows 11, but just as my impressions about it, at this early stage. So on to the future. I will not be impressed if the taskbar icons remain condensed, because that is negatively impacting my experience, even after trying them for over a month. I eventually installed a third-party program to return it more to how it was in Windows 10, and when those taskbars became stretched again, I felt considerable relief. That's not good. That shouldn't be how I feel when I return to the older way of doing things. Of course, there's no point in trying the beta if I'm just going to throw a third-party program over the top of it, which is why I'll be returning to Windows 10 for now. I still don't understand the need to get emotional about what I said in my main Windows 11 video. It was me reporting on my first impressions of the new operating system, and while I wasn't the most positive about it, it was far from being an angry rant. I think I was quite objective about it, even if I did get it wrong about the renaming of items, which I hope that this video has addressed. Please, take these videos for what they are. I'm not calling Windows 11 a disaster. I'm just disappointed that there isn't more to it at this early stage. Like I said in my main video, you'd think, for a new version of Windows, that there would be some key core change to it. And if the benefits of Windows 11 are going to be added later, with just months to go before official release, then why couldn't they just have added these new features to Windows 10 instead? Windows 11 was alpha when I started with it, and now it's in beta. I will stress again that there will be more polish and fewer bugs to it as time goes on, but at this point, I'm still struggling to see why a new version of Windows was required in the first place. And normally I can find a reason, even if it's a flimsy one. For instance, I saw the move to Vista as being one of the biggest leaps for Windows ever. I always saw it as being when they did away with ancient code that was starting to groan and creak under the weight of everything that had been built on top of it. With Vista, the foundations were replaced and rewritten to a modern standard to be a lot more secure going forward. Of course, such a big change came with huge bugs and compatibility issues, and its bloated user interface caused it to perform poorly on many older and slower systems. I always saw Windows 7 as being Vista, but with years worth of updates and patches. Windows 7 was Microsoft's way of distancing themselves from the Vista name and reputation, though in practice, I felt little difference between Windows 7 and a mature build of Vista. Windows 7 was like the new XP, where Microsoft had finally made an operating system that was polished and reliable, compared with those that came before. Windows 8 was a misstep, designed too closely around mobile devices and nobody liked it. So Windows 10 was then moving away from the disaster that was 8 by returning back to what worked with Windows 7, but with a slightly different and darker look, and a better start menu. I didn't notice much else different about it if I'm honest. But Windows 11? I don't know what this is at the moment, or what separates it from what came before. I'm still waiting for the reason for why this should exist. I've noticed Microsoft shifting to a subscription model with their other software, so I'm worrying that Windows 11 is them realising that Windows 10 was too good a deal, and that with this new version of Windows they'll be pushing harder for an annual subscription model or something like that. Again, it's too early to tell, but this is just something I'm keeping an eye on, because I hate subscriptions. So what do you think? And how do you use Windows? Comment below and don't forget to smash